Good morning, students. Welcome to another week of lecture. This week, we're going to be in chapter 7. And in chapter 7, we're going to be talking about the presidency. We're going to be talking about the role of the president, but also not just the president. We're also going to be a little focused on the governor of California. And so we're going to go through this lecture. And the reason why I do the governor of California is because in this course, you should be learning not just the federal government, even though it's American government, but you should be learning about state and county and your municipalities, as well as your school boards and your water boards. I don't think we realize how much we are governed, and we send people to represent us. So we're getting ready to start. This chapter is called The Presidency, Conventional Wisdom and Redefined, and the Governor of California. When we're talking about requirements for becoming president, you find these requirements in the Constitution in Article 2, Section 1, and it says no foreign-born naturalized citizen is eligible. That means if you are if you're born in another country, come to the United States and become a U.S. citizen, you are not eligible to be president of the United States. And so you must be born in the United States. Now, let me make myself clear when I say this to you. If your parents are in the military, or if your parents are doing a government type of job, a governmental, working for the U.S. government, and let's say your mom's pregnant while your dad's, let's just say both of your parents are in the military. Let's say mom and dad are in Germany on a U.S. base, and you're born there. Your parents can have you do dual citizenship. They can, but or they can just have you be a U.S. citizen, because if you're born on a U.S. base, that's considered U.S. That's considered U.S. land. So any place around the world that the United States government uses purposes for the sole purpose of doing work for the people. So if your parents are in the military, your parents work for the embassy, and you're born in a foreign country, you would be considered a naturalized citizen. And you won't be considered foreign born, even though you're born in a foreign country. So I know it's a little weird, but your parents are doing work for the government. They're in a commission of a job for the U.S., and so that's why. You must be 35 years or older. And it says previous occupation, race, gender, and religion are insignificant. So be aware of that. Now, these are in practice. Let's be honest. Occupation matters. We've never had a person who was a maintenance man worked, and I'm being serious. Like, we never had a person who was a maintenance man become president of the United States. Okay, most of our presidents have they've had professional jobs. If not professional jobs, they've just been wealthy. Race. In practice, we say race doesn't matter. And Barack Obama was president. So now those who would say, well, race does matter, you can kind of push back, because Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. So when we talk about president, you're also kind of talking about vice president. Gender, being president, I still argue gender matters. We'll let a woman be vice president, but we've yet to let one be president. And then religion, I argue that you must be a Christian. Catholics are Christians. We call the Catholic Church, we don't call it, it just is the first church. So Catholicism is the mother church of all of Christianity. It's the beginning. And then you have Protestant faiths, maybe Methodist, Baptist, evangelicals, all those are called Protestant faiths, and they are breakoffs of the church of the Anglican Church, which is the Church of England. And the Church of England broke off from the Catholic Church during the reign of Henry VIII. So then you also have Lutherans. You have you have a whole lot of different types of offshoots of Christianity. So when we talk about Christianity is a faith that you must believe in Jesus Christ is the begotten Son of God. He's born of a virgin. That's what makes them a Christian faith. Okay, so let's be clear. A lot of times, my Catholic students will say, "I'm not Christian, I'm Catholic," and it's like, yeah, what you are is a Christian. The type of denomination the type of denomination you practice is Catholicism. And so it's Christianity is the umbrella, and then below that is the sub religions or the subcategories of Christianity. So just be aware of that. When we talk about becoming president, diversity prior to 2009, all presidents had been white, male, and Protestant Christian. You notice how I said that? And now, and I need to change this, there have been 2 Catholic presidents. So we don't no longer have one. So pay attention to that. There have been one, no, actually there have been 2, because now we have this year in 2021, we have a new president. His name is Joe Biden. He's also a Catholic. So John F. Kennedy and Joe Biden are the only 2 Catholic presidents we've had. And then we have one Black president, Barack Obama. And then we've had one female vice president, but we've had 2, when we talk about vice president, we had 2 vice presidents who have been vice presidents of color. And so Kamala Harris being the second and the first female. So there has been slightly greater diversity among those running for president. So we've had quite a few Black and brown. This last turn around, this last time around during the primaries, we had quite a few. We had Julian Castro, we had Cory Booker. So, I mean, we've had a lot of people of color running. We had Ted Cruz, you had Marco Rubio back in 2016. So you had, prior to Kamala Harris, you had Geraldine Ferraro, who ran as a major in the general election with Walter Mondale back in 80, I think it was 84. God, wow. Ooh. And then you fast forward to you had Sarah Palin in 2008, and then you had Hillary Clinton who ran the top of the ticket in 2016. And so we starting to see a lot more diversity and men of color and women of color who are running, and women, period, who are running for the highest office in the land. And I personally think that's important, because young girls need to see themselves in these positions so they know that they can run too. This idea only being a man qualifies you to be president, or even white, or being a Protestant. I mean, come on, we might be overlooking a lot of people who we might deem qualified, who would be deemed qualified, but we're negating them based on their gender, or based on their religious, or their race, or their sexuality. So these are just things to be aware of and remember. I think if we pay attention to people's policies, then we would probably get a better crop of people running for president. We tend to vote based on personality more than we vote on, knowledge, intelligence, maybe. Anyway, so the requirements for being governor of California: must be a citizen of the United States. You have to be qualified to vote. You have to qualify to vote. So that means you can't have a felony. So if you can't vote, you can't be governor. But you notice it doesn't say that about being president. And you must be a California resident for at least 5 years immediately preceding the election. Again, the only time you get to run for governor in California, and it's not preceding the 5 years, is if you're in the commission of doing the job for the government. So if I'm ambassador of Japan and I decide I want to run for governor, I can still run because I was in the commission of doing a job for the U.S. government. When the president asks, or even the governor, when they ask you to serve, you don't turn them down. If you pay attention, a lot of people were saying when Donald Trump was president, I can't believe these people would work with him. But the reality is most people will work with somebody if they're president of the United States. When the president calls, you serve. Hillary Clinton worked with Barack Obama after a very contentious 2008 primary season. It was very contentious. But when Barack Obama called her to serve as Secretary of State, she accepted, because when the president calls, you take your personality out of it. And you serve your country. You're serving your country, just like if you're in the military. Look, military people aren't the only people serving their country. There are people, heck, teachers are serving their country. You know, a lot of time people don't, you can make a lot more money in the public sector than you can make in the private sector. And so people serve, and the civil servants are serving their country. So may you be in the military, may you work at an embassy in another country. You're in a commission of serving the country. And so that when the president calls or the governor calls, you serve, even if they're of a different political party, you serve. These are roles of being president. The role of the president is the chief executive. And so, so in that role, in the role of chief executive, he enforces the law and federal court decisions, along with treaties approved by the United States. And then it just gives some examples of what he does in that role. Then he's commander in chief. He leads the nation's armed forces. And in that role, he can end fighting by calling a ceasefire. This is what we saw in, well, actually, Donald Trump is the one that called for ceasefire in, well, not so much as the withdrawal of our troops in Afghanistan. It was Joe Biden who oversaw the withdrawal. And regardless of what people think about it, most Americans wanted to get out of Afghanistan. It was 20 years too long, and people wanted to get out. And you have two men of two opposite political parties who agreed on an issue that Joe Biden always wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Even when he was vice president under Barack Obama, he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. It was people in the administration like Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton who were saying we have to stay. And so Joe Biden under Obama was on the losing side of that argument, as well as people in the military. But we find out later that military leaders were saying it was a lost cause. It really, and you started to find out later, these guys were saying this is a lost cause. But they weren't leaving because they were worried about Taliban and ISIS and those guys going back into Afghanistan and using Afghanistan as a home base for terrorism around the world. In the role of head of state, he performs activities as personal symbol of the nation. The Thanksgiving turkey pardon, that's a big deal. I was reading an article where they were talking about sending the turkeys to a sanctuary so they can live longer, because what they're finding is when turkeys are pardoned, the White House sends them, they'll send them to Disneyland, they'll send them to the zoo, to the LA County Zoo or San Diego Zoo or Disney World. They'll send them to those places, and they're finding that these turkeys' lifespan is maybe 6 months to a year after being pardoned. And there's a sanctuary, one in New York and one here in California, that it has that will take them in. And what they do is put them on a diet to have them lose weight, because what they were saying was the turkeys were too big in their body. And, anytime, even if we're too big, it's too much for the heart. And so there's this sanctuary, I forgot the name escapes me now, that will take these turkeys in, or the National Christmas Tree. You're going to see these in the next, we're going to see this around in November and December. You see these activities taking place at the White House. Chief diplomat directs the U.S. foreign policy and is the nation's most important representative in dealing with foreign countries. The president is the chief diplomat, but the Secretary of State represents the president. So the Secretary of State is the president's chief diplomat. And so the Secretary of State travels around the world and represents the presidents. But the president makes pacts and which are not treaties, they're pacts. And you don't need Senate approval, so just be aware of that. And then he's chief legislator. He informs Congress about the conditions of the country and recommends legislative measures. And then he's political party leader. He chooses his vice president. And Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris, but Joe Biden, I don't believe Kamala Harris was Joe Biden's first pick. I'll just say that. I don't believe that. I believe Joe Biden was forced into choosing Kamala Harris because he was getting pushback from communities of color, especially the Black community, saying she was the most qualified person for that position out of all, because remember, Joe Biden said he was going to choose a woman. And Kamala Harris had she had local experience being a prosecutor. in San Francisco. She had state wide experience being attorney general, and then she had federal experience being a senator. So she, and in her role as attorney general, California has the second largest justice department behind the United States in the country. So she has that executive experience running a department and being a supervisor. So when she was running, and at one point it was down, I believe it was down to her and Susan Rice. Susan Rice has no electoral experience. Susan Rice has never been elected to. So when this came up, people, especially academics and professionals, wrote a letter to Joe Biden saying Kamala Harris is the one. So he was pushed into it because even there was rumors, and I'm a political scientist, so I hear rumors a lot. There was rumors that Jill Biden didn't want Kamala Harris because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's exchange during the Democratic debates when Kamala Harris reprimanded Joe Biden on the bus. Remember, Joe Biden was against busing, and Kamala Harris was a product of busing. So she called him out. And it wasn't just Kamala Harris in that. What's his name? Cory Booker also called him out. But we tend to, in a society, when there's a man and a woman, and the woman does it and the man does it, we tend to reprimand women because as if she's out of line. We tend to receive certain things more from men than we do women, and that is according to data. Okay, when we talk about leadership roles, the Queen in the UK is Queen Elizabeth is the head of state. Her prime minister is head of government. In the United States, Joe Biden is both head of state and head of government. And I usually tell people this is probably why Queen Elizabeth is way into her 90s. And US presidents tend to die younger because it's a hard job. And having all those roles as both head of state and head of government, he's cutting ribbons, but he's also making policy. He's doing multiple jobs. When we talk about the presidential selection process, contributes significantly to the lack of diversity in the presidency. Let's be real. I'm going to be real. We tend to not, even with all the diversity in the last primary, we ended up with 2 older white men running for president. And we did. And that's our default. I think we as a culture feel much more safer electing older white men into that role. It's just a default, right? I mean, if you say certain things, you tend to default to a mindset. So if I say school shooter, most people are going to think white male. You just do. When that's not true. Most school shootings are not white men. I mean, they are white men, but they're not all white. All school shootings are not white males. But we do default. If you can say anything, you can say gang violence. If you say gang violence, you default to black or brown men. We just do. If you say urban, you think black. You just do. I mean, come on. We do. We have these defaults and we pigeonhole people into these categories, and which leads to stereotypes and which leads to other problems in our society. Then we have a nomination process, which we call caucuses and primaries. I don't like caucuses. I think we need to get rid of caucuses. Primaries, California, we do primaries. The polls open from 7 to 8. So no matter what, nobody's working from all that. You're getting a break somewhere in there. So you can go do a provisional ballot. So that means you don't have to be in your neighborhood to do your ballot. But also in California now, you can mail your ballot in. So they make it very easy. A lot of states don't do that. There's a lot of voting suppression going on. There's no voter fraud in the United States is at a minimum. Voter fraud in this country does not affect our elections at all. And it's funny because what I'm finding is during my research, majority of the people that have committed voter fraud is from the group that's accusing people of voter fraud. It's funny. So do your research, you'll find that to be true. Caucuses I think they're exclusionary, and there are elitists. A caucus is you go to a building, maybe the high school gym, and at 5 o'clock. And what they will do at a caucus is all around the room, you will see names. You'll see Joe Biden, you see Kamala Harris, you see Cory Booker, you see Julian Castro, you see Elizabeth Warren, you see Amy Klobuchar, you see Bernie Sanders, you see all these names on the wall. You will walk over to the person you're supporting, and then they take a head count. And that's how, and that precinct will call the party headquarters and tell them who won that precinct. Again, I have a problem with caucuses because with a caucus, if they're meeting from 5 to 8 and I have to be at work, then I'm excluded from the process. And those are and that affects communities of color because a lot of your service jobs are done by communities of color. And so if I'm working, I can't make it, right? And so, and then also having these functions in certain neighborhoods also is exclusionary. So if we don't have a caucus and I got to drive across town to participate and I'm not always welcome on that side of town, am I going to participate? The first two contests are in states of Iowa and New Hampshire. I think we need to change that in an ever diversified country where you have Iowa and New Hampshire are about 90% white. And I don't think that's a reflection of the United States. And back in the 80s, 90s, when people will win Iowa and New Hampshire, they would pretty much say, oh, okay, it's the primary's over, this person won. Now in 2021, it doesn't work like that. In fact, if you go back to the previous primary in the Democratic side, and I'm focused on the Democratic side because nobody's running against Donald Trump. Donald Trump was going to win. Period. He's going to win his primary for the Republicans. And the Democratic side, Joe Biden lost Iowa and New Hampshire. And I remember them saying they were writing his political obituary. Joe Biden's done. Bernie Sanders is going to be the new head of the going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party. And a lot of people were worried because they didn't think Bernie Sanders could beat Donald Trump because, you know, calling somebody a socialist doesn't play well in other states. Now, I'm not talking about California. I'm talking about other states. AOC won't do as well in Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas. She does well, and she'll do well in places like Washington, California, and New York. But you got to remember, there's 50 states, and some people don't play well in certain. They don't, and we have to remember. Just because Black people vote for Democrats in the 90 percentile, you got to remember a lot of Democrats tend to be very conservative, but when it comes to social issues, they're very liberal. So some issues, they're very conservative. Black people by and large tend to be very conservative. So AOC wouldn't win an election in Georgia, Florida, but she does very well in New York. And we got to remember these things. And so when we're talking about our country, we see it from a lens of California. And so we got to understand California does, even Republicans in our state are a little more liberal than the majority of the Republican Party. Okay, and so when we saw the primary, I think Pete Buttigieg, who's our current Secretary of Transportation, had won Iowa. Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire. They were waiting for South Carolina and Nevada because Hispanics are a large population of Nevada and Black people are a large population of South Carolina. So they were waiting for those two states. And so when Biden went into Nevada and South Carolina, he won. And so, and now remember, Pete Buttigieg won Iowa. The story goes that Barack Obama called Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and told them to drop out because they were heading into the South after that. After Iowa and New Hampshire, they were heading to the South. And Pete Buttigieg was not going to win in the South. He's just not. And neither was Amy Klobuchar because then stories about her time as a prosecutor started coming out. Remember, Kamala Harris that really dogged Kamala Harris because she supposedly put millions of Black men in prison, which isn't true. That's not a true, accurate uh, that's not accurate of what she did. And so one thing I'm going to do is always be transparent and honest. And if you do your research, you find out she didn't put millions. And she was pretty progressive when she was Attorney General in California. In fact, most district attorneys like Fani Willis down in Atlanta, up in New York, you have. She's getting ready to run for. She's the current Attorney General of New York. She's getting ready to run for, and her name escapes me, but she's getting ready to run for governor of the state of New York. They all Marilyn Mosby out of Baltimore. They all say that if it wasn't for Kamala Harris, they wouldn't be there, because at one point Kamala Harris was the only black district attorney in the United States. I mean, especially a black woman at that. So when she was district attorney, she was the only woman in all these offices across the country. She was the only one. So what ended up happening to Amy Klobuchar was what that affected Kamala Harris, was that she was a district attorney, and people started questioning all the black men she put in prison. My question is, why do we always question women of the same that we don't question men when they run? Or if it's a black person, why are we questioning black people for putting quote unquote black people in prison when the white guy or the Hispanic? I mean, we only, it's like they're not supposed to do their jobs, and that's something we got to look internally at ourselves. Why do we expect women to do their? Why do we penalize women for doing their jobs? That's when you take these positions, you take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and all of this stuff is in our Constitution. The general election, you have a general election where the Electoral College, 538 votes, and then the candidate that wins the majority might not win the Electoral College, as we saw with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton didn't win the Electoral College, she won the popular vote. Joe Biden won both. For those of us who are on here who still think the previous president is president, no, he's not. He lost. I don't believe it was that widespread I don't believe there was voter fraud. And like I said before, the people that accuse people of voter fraud, if you check the data, it's usually their supporters who are committed. Just saying. Originally designed to have minimal influence on policy making when we talk about presidential power. Policy was done in the Congress. Presidents did not do policy prior to Franklin Roosevelt, but because of the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt came in with a lot of policies. He came in with Social Security. Yeah, and so when Franklin Roosevelt was president, he did a lot of things, and like I said, he did Social Security prior to, and we got to understand, prior to Franklin Roosevelt, prior to Social Security, poor people worked to the day they died, period. There was no money put away. And it's important to have Social Security, because what you guys don't understand is if you're poor and you don't make enough, you're not saving. And we got to get out of this mindset, well, that's not my problem. And I think young people are doing that now. That's why you have a lot of companies that don't have enough employees, where you're not paying people, but your CEO is making $50 million. So we got to quit. And then he's making more than that because you also give him stock options up to 500 million. So people are starting to question, do CEOs need to make that much money? What are they doing all day that constitutes them making that much money? Because if you get rid of the administrative packages and put that back into payroll, the data has shown that people are making enough money. A, turnover is low, and B, profits tend to rise in corporations that pay their employees a living wage. And I'm just only going by what the data shows. Franklin Roosevelt connected with the people. He did these fireside chats every Friday on the radio. We wouldn't do that now. He probably would do it on some kind of social media platform, TikTok. Seeks to lead Congress. Before, again, like I said, policies were done in the legislative branch. And then the executive branch is pretty large. One of the many powers of the president, he enforces laws. He ensures policies go into effect. We right now just had a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that went into effect. Presidents have been trying to get infrastructure done since I would say back since the 90s. And so we finally got an infrastructure bill that passed. So Joe Biden has an achievement. Ensures policies go into effect, signs statements. So statements are reasons why the president is signing this infrastructure bill, for example. It issues executive orders where it doesn't have to go through Congress. The president just can make an executive order. Then we nominate executive branch officials, federal judges, ambassadors, and I kind of went over that when I showed you the model of the many roles of the president. Grants, pardons, and reprieves. One thing I'll give Donald Trump did pardons, and most presidents wait to the end of their term. Donald Trump was doing it all during his term, so he kind of broke tradition, but he was well within his right to do. And so when people would say, I don't think it's right, we need to take that away. Nah, we can't change things because it doesn't work for you when the guy you don't like is doing it. No, they've always done it that way. There are certain things we need to get rid of. The filibuster is something we need to do. I would argue anything that is a relic of slavery needs to be gotten rid of. The Electoral College is one thing. The filibuster is another. There's many things our government does that are relics of a bygone era. And so I usually, and I will say this, when people say any group of people needs to get over something, I usually say, well, people will get over those things if we get rid of these things. So the ownership, the onus is on those in power to get rid of certain things. These are relics, and that's my issue with Joe Biden. He supports the filibuster. The filibuster is a relic of a bygone era. Get rid of it. If it's 51 senators that support a bill, they support it. And then when your people get in, they can overturn it. That's how elections work. Foreign powers of the president receives ambassadors from other countries, negotiate treaties, and then I kind of went over executive agreements. And then I told you guys the serves as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He has war powers. The War Powers Act goes back to the Vietnam War. Some people think we need to curb the War Powers Act, and also sending drones in to kill our enemy combatants. And the president has a wide array of power. We gotta remember that. Domestic powers, he can veto. Then there's the pocket veto. And then the president does the State of the Union address. He attempts to suggest legislation to Congress. And that's where the State of the Union is. That's what he does as when it comes to the legislator, when he has to show a report. And by law, the president has to give a report. He doesn't have to have it televised. He can write a letter to the Speaker of the House, and she disseminates it to everybody else. And the reason why you do State of the Union is an attempt to garner public support for public policy. And remember, when we talk about the State of the Union, when we're talking about the State of the Union is the Speaker of the House invites the president to the to Congress to speak before Congress. The head of the Senate, the president pro tem of the Senate, or the majority leader cannot do it. It has to be the Speaker of the House. That's the power the Constitution gives the Speaker of the House. Okay. So when we talk about these things, we need just be aware that the role of the president is a very powerful one. The president, and like I said, the president has the power to veto. When we talk about a pocket veto, when we talk about pocket vetoes are when a bill is put into legislation by the legislator, and it becomes, and I'm trying to sorry you guys, I'm trying to simplify it because the term is very when a bill is sent to the president's desk, but he doesn't deal with it at all, and it has to be dealt with within a specified time. So if he doesn't sign it, he doesn't veto it, and it just kind of lingers there, that's considered a pocket veto. That makes okay. That's a simplified version of it. And these are the lecture. This is your lecture for the week. I want to wish you guys well. I will see you guys. Well, you won't see you, but I'll have a lecture coming up next week. Be aware that we are heading into the end of the semester. So I will be taking all assignments except for hot topics and lecture up until the end of the month. So November 30th will be the last day that at 11:59 p.m. will be the last day I'll take any outstanding assignments. Okay, I will see you guys next week. Thank you.